Welcome back, friends. My name is BigWynter, and today I've got your weekly roundup of gaming's biggest news stories and leaks. So without further ado, let's waste no time and jump right into our first story of today, which is still the game everybody is talking about, and of course, it's Black Myth Wukong. I'm sure many of you have heard plenty of things floating about the internet on this game since release, and if you've been following the last few weeks' episodes here, I've talked about it pretty much every single week. I spoke about how it was one of the most wishlisted games on Steam and how it smashed the previous single-player records, but things just keep getting crazier. It was announced this week that Wukong alone fueled over 1 exabyte of online traffic to Steam from China alone. Unsurprisingly, China is typically one of the biggest traffic routes for Steam and usually accounts for roughly 30% of global traffic, but with the drop of Wukong, that spiked to an insane 50% over the first few days of the game's release. Additionally, Wukong surpassed 10 million sales across PC and PS5 within the first 3 days, which is an absolutely insane statistic. For reference, Elden Ring, which largely considered by many is to be one of the best and most successful games of all time, sold roughly 12 million copies in the first 2 weeks. The fact Wukong almost beat this in 3 days is beyond wild. And with an Xbox version in the works, I would not be surprised if these sales numbers spike again. By the time this video goes live, I'll have streamed a fair bit of this game, so come stop by if you're interested. Shameless plug over, let's take a look at story number 2. A couple of weeks ago, we had a story on the channel looking at various voice actors and organizations taking a stand and striking against the use of AI in video games. The concern being that many jobs, especially those for voice actors, could be taken over completely. But have no fear, Amazon Games CEO Christoph Hartmann says we've got nothing to worry about, as when it comes to video games, there's no such thing as acting. Which I'm sure many of you feel the same way after hearing this. Kind of pissed me off a little bit. For anyone who's been gaming for a while, especially over the last couple of years or so, there is so much acting and artistic expression that goes into video games, especially those with a story or narrative driven experience. You only have to look at literally any Naughty Dog game for the last 10 years, like the Uncharted series or The Last of Us, to realize how wrong that statement is. The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 have an insanely talented cast who also performed a ton of the motion cap to give the game an even greater and more realistic feel. I think we can also agree that the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 has become insanely popular and famous over the last year or so for their incredible performance in the game, which roped so many players in with lovable characters and the heavily narrative-driven experience. Even Kratos from the most recent God of War games has so few lines in them as a whole, and yet the actor's performance was so good that the emotion of the character was still conveyed. I could go on, but you get my point. As the CEO of a gaming branch for arguably one of the most successful companies ever, I can't help but be disappointed here. One thing he did say though that I have to agree with, if it is in fact true, is apparently the use of AI in games will largely be directed towards the boring back-end building tasks rather than the front-facing artistic side of things. With advancements in the back-end, we could see game development timelines reduced by 20 to 40%, meaning we get more games faster. Honestly, if it means we get games faster, the quality is maintained, and we still get awesome character performances with the jobs not being taken from talented actors, I'm not against it. Now on to our next story, the next biggest fantasy RPG since Skyrim, or at least what we've been told. Back in 2020, Obsidian announced that they were working on a new RPG set in the beloved world of the Pillars of Eternity universe. After some early backlash to the initial gameplay trailer a year ago, it does seem as though there have been some major improvements. Some more official gameplay has dropped, and many parties like IGN were invited to give the game a go, and many of them were pleasantly surprised. To be honest, I take much of early gameplay reveals from larger review studios like IGN with a hefty pinch of salt, but after watching them, it actually looks pretty good. The game will have a classless upgrade system, much like Skyrim, which will allow you to build your character with whichever medley of weapons and abilities you like the most. Plus, a pretty cool feature I saw in the reveal was the ability to hot swap your 2 equipped weapons on the fly, allowing for a drastic change in approach at the touch of a button, which was pretty cool. On the story side of things, not much has been revealed, of course, but we do know that there will be more than 10 different endings to the game, which I'm sure will come as a very welcome change when the time comes. But not all is well in the world of Avowed, as according to the game's art developer, the team are aiming for at least 30 FPS, but he commented on the fact that 60 FPS is not necessary in a single player game. Honestly, as a firm believer in 2K 144Hz over 4K 60, I absolutely disagree unless you're playing on some gargantuan TV and you're 40 meters away. The game is based in Unreal 5, so let's hope a stable 60 is what we get when the game drops in February of 2025. But speaking of new game drops and shorter stories, let's jump into our quickfire round. Starting us off, let's take a little look at Valorant. By the time this video drops, the newest Agent Vice will have dropped with the newest act. Some controversy has sparked over the released abilities. Most of them are focused on crowd control with stunning, slowing, and isolating enemies, but her ultimate will force enemy players to use their secondary weapon, which sounds like it would be the most bogus thing to play against. What do you think? Some kind of sad news for Concord, but things do not look to be going well. With less than 700 peak players on Steam on launch day, it's pretty safe to say the launch was not a hit success. Despite this though, developers Fireworks Studios are determined to work on the game further to bring in million new players and have already released their first major patch to the game. From what I've seen, it actually looks really cool, so I honestly hope things pick up for Concord and I'll keep tabs on it. On the other end of things, Deadlock isn't even out yet and has had a peak player count of over 90,000 players over the last weekend. However, not all is looking good for Deadlock, as there were already reports of players cheating in the game, which is absolutely wild. Knowing Valve though, they're surely working hard on getting a handle on the issue prior to an official release date. The multiplayer reveal trailer for Black Ops 6 just dropped this week and got more than 12 million views in the first 24 hours. Now, it's been a while since I got excited for a Call of Duty title, but with the game dropping on Game Pass day one, you best believe I'll be checking this bad boy out. And finally here, another game I've been keeping tabs on for some time, the newest installment in the Warhammer 40k universe will be dropping on the 7th of September, featuring both PvE and PvP shenanigans. I really enjoy games like Darktide and Vermintide, and the newest installment of the franchise looks to be some next level fun, so stay tuned for more details. But that's it for me today. What do you make of the news this week? Drop a like and sub if you enjoyed, ding that bell for next week's episode, take care out there, and much love.